pricing our creative services can be one of the most confusing, overwhelming, and downright challenging things to do for a lot of creative freelancers. I'm McKay. This is Coaching for Creatives, and welcome to today's conversation where I'm going to talk about the biggest pricing mistakes that I've seen creative freelancers make. So what we're going to start off with today is looking at creative freelancers who base their pricing on whether or not they can afford their own services. When I first started out as a photographer in the 90s, one of the main things that I was interested in photographing was weddings. And when I was looking at pricing for weddings, I really looked at the wedding photographers that I admired and who were out there in the industry doing great work. I looked at their pricing, I looked at their business. I looked at my costs and how much money I made. I looked at a bunch of different things. And the number that I came up with to price my wedding services felt really scary and intimidating. It felt like, I don't know that I would pay that much personally to get wedding photographs. So the idea of only charging what you can afford to pay only works if you are your ideal client. If you're not your ideal client, then you don't want to base your prices on how you feel about the market's ability to pay. You want to base your price on the data, on the research, on absolutely knowing that your clients do have the ability to pay, but not how you feel about it. Said another way, oftentimes I see creative freelancers price based on their confidence level in being able to ask for that price. Lots of creatives that I know are confident in their creative skills. They're great graphic designers. They know how to do their copywriting. They're experienced photographers. But the piece that we lack a lot of training on and that we don't necessarily have the same experience around as creatives is actually selling our services and going into a sales meeting and saying the price. And oftentimes it's just our own confidence, our own imposter syndrome, our lack of comfort in saying our price. And you want to there's a sort of a dichotomy that goes on where you don't want to price based on your own imposter syndrome, and your worth of your services is not the same as your self-worth. So I want to be really clear that your own worth and value as a human being, as a creative, that's intrinsic, that's unquestionable. But we're talking about the value of your services. And so those two things are very separate. And if you start believing that what you're actually putting a price on is your value or your worth, that can get really complicated and convoluted. And it's not actually what your clients are paying for. They're paying for the value that your services provide them. So don't mistake your own self-worth for the value that you bring to the marketplace. A lot of times that is the piece that we keep coming back to again and again. We can do all of the work of choosing a pricing model, of figuring out a pricing strategy, of calculating our numbers. We can do all of the work of really coming to a solid price, and then the mindset takes over, then our confidence takes over. And yes, it's important to feel confident that your price is a valid price. And then there's that piece underneath it about, do you feel confident charging that price? So sometimes we have to do additional work on the mindset in order to feel confident with the prices that we've calculated. We need to look at some of the limiting beliefs, maybe recreate or get present to what makes you so awesome and amazing, what makes you qualified, all of those pieces that sometimes come up to impact the rest of our business decisions. Those sort of internal, emotional, and mindset issues will impact our external business practices and prices. So that's one piece. So don't conflate your self-worth with your actual worth of your services. The other part is that sometimes we can get stuck in a certain industry standard pricing model. And yes, there's a lot of comfort, a lot of efficiency in using established pricing models or pricing strategies. And sometimes we don't do the due diligence that we need to do to find out, are these pricing models really a fit for us? Do we maybe need to bring some innovation to how we're setting up our prices, our services, how we're maybe packaging them, or how we're positioning them in the marketplace? The biggest pricing mistakes that I've seen creative freelancers make. Well, let me tell you the reason for today's conversation, which is that I saw a post in one of our professional associations Facebook groups, and someone was looking for pricing advice. So what a lot of people were saying was really great to separate out, the piece of creating or capturing the image from the post-production stuff. People had great things to say about how you could do day rates or half day rates, how you could do per image, how there's so many different ways that you can present your pricing. And what I noticed with that is a lot of the information that was going on was really valuable for us as creatives, as videographers, photographers, writers, designers, for us to know internally. We need to know all of those pieces. But how we present our price to our clients, sometimes, many of our clients are going to get overwhelmed if we just keep putting line item by line item by line item. There can be the perception that if we price really detailed and we break out all of the different elements that we're charging for, there can be a perception of being nickeled and dimed. So presenting your price with really detailed line items is not what I would recommend for a general practice. Now, of course, there are some businesses or companies that really want those detailed line items, but for most of us who are creative freelancers, it's better for us to lump that all into a project with a scope description and the deliverables for that project, rather than saying, oh, it's going to take 2 hours or 3 hours, or we're charging separate for this, this, and this. To really look at all of those pieces behind the scenes, and then when we present it, to present it based on a project instead of trying to nickel and dime or have all of those line items out in our proposal. So one of the other pricing mistakes that I often see creatives make is that they will look to a neighbor and say, well, they're pricing this, I'll just charge the same thing. And we all know from client perspective that when you're looking at creative services, it's almost impossible to compare two different service offers, because there's so many different things that go into it in terms of time investment, deliverables, all of those things that we do behind the scenes. But there's also a difference in skill level, in talent, in communication style, in process, in how we approach a project, in the experience that we're bringing to it. So we can't just look at our neighbor's price sheet and charge exactly the same thing. We do need to look at our neighbor's price sheet so that we can be mindful of where we fit in the overall picture. But to simply base our prices on what somebody else is charging may not work long-term for our own business. It may not be sustainable for our business. And the last pricing mistake that I'm going to share with you today is that often creatives will price one of their services or one of their kinds of offers, and then they'll totally price a different kind of service over here and then a different kind of service over here. And there's not any continuity or rationale to how all of those services fit together in terms of their pricing or in terms of how they are positioned in the market. So we want to look at all of the factors internally and then look at the other ones externally, and then look at how we're positioning ourselves in the market. This has been Coaching for Creatives. I'm McKay. I'm the founder of Business of Creativity, and I'd love to see you here live next week, or check us out on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and leave a comment. Thank you so much. Have a great week.